Hi, HRN listeners. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary, and we have a really fun campaign and an ask for you. This 15th anniversary tour is aiming to bring you closer to unique food and music experiences in some of the most exciting cities in America. All the while, we're raising funds to support our work empowering the next generation of food system storytellers through our fellowship programs. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and be entered into a raffle in the city of your choice to win a dinner for two at a noteworthy restaurant and tickets for two to a concert at a prominent local venue. We have incredible partners in New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Asheville, and Ardmore, Pennsylvania, who have donated a meal for two and two tickets to a concert of the winner's choice. And all donations help fund our fellowship programs, where we're helping to build essential workforce readiness skills and food system storytelling skills. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
This program is made possible thanks to the generosity of our listeners. Show your support at heritageradionetwork.org/donate.
This week on Meat and Three, we look at the ways indoor and outdoor spaces are being reconceptualized during the pandemic to better suit new modes of living, working, and eating.
It's brought a vibrancy and an energy back to the city streets that was so dearly missed during the height of the pandemic.
This is about how we can grow indoors all year round, using proprietary technology that we've developed.
How do I have someone understand, look, don't take a next to the June berries because you can eat those. That's free food.
Tune in to Meat and Three, HRN's weekly food news roundup, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, welcome to Beer Sessions Radio on the Heritage Radio Network. We're recording remotely, and it's October 2020, a special pre-election episode with some good brewer friends. I'm Jimmy Carboni. I'm the host here on Heritage Radio Network. So let's go around the room and introduce everyone. Let's start with Jesse.
Hey, Jimmy, this is Jesse Ferguson. I'm the co-founder and brewer at Interboro Spirits and Ales in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, man. Thanks for putting the show together with me, Jesse. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And Gene?
Hello, my name is Gene Brule, and I'm the co-founder, owner, brewer, janitor at Tired Hands Brewing Company out here in Ardmore, Pennsylvania.
Great, man. Thanks for what you do. And Ryan?
Hi, my name is Ryan Witter-Merrithew, and I am co-founder and brewer at Casita Brewing Company in Wilson, North Carolina.
Great. So it's October 2020. There have been a lot of virtual collaborations, beer collaborations, social justice beers that have been made this year. Many of them we've covered, including the All Together Beer Project and the Black is Beautiful Stout Project. Jesse, the last week I saw your sales sheet for New York City accounts, and I was noting just how many great collabs you've been part of. Recently, you had done the Crosstown Kolsch with Brooklyn Brewery, and You wanted to talk about this certain collaboration. So tell us about, generally what you guys have been doing for collabs, this year.
It's been an interesting year. We being part of the brewing community, for me has always meant working as closely as possible with other brewers. It's a great way to, learn other people's tricks or share your own tricks. And I mean that in the best possible way, just in terms of open source brewing. And that's how I learned to brew was open source brewing. And so constantly staying in touch with other brewers about what's working for them and sharing what's working for us is always been part of the ethos for me. And so having this COVID shutdown, and meaning that we couldn't travel and we couldn't go to festivals and we couldn't, get together with people face to face and keep that community going as strong as it had been, really was like one of the worst parts of this whole situation for us. And so we started doing like Zoom calls and just extensive email threads, but just to keep the creative juices flowing, I guess, as you would say. And we tried to keep our collaborations is as exciting as possible. The Brooklyn Brewery one was fun because those guys actually did come over. Like they're close enough that they got on their bikes and rode over, and we made a really cool culture together. So that was fun. But unfortunately, somebody like Gene, as much as I probably would have been to Philly twice by now since March just to hang out and chill, and that has not happened because I have not been traveling. So.
Yeah. So, Gene, tell us about the club. I've noticed you've also been doing a lot of cool projects too. So, just give us an intro. What the last 8 months have been like for you guys at Tired Hands?
Yeah, sure. So, like most breweries, when this whole thing hit, we planned on playing it pretty close to the chest, sort of, playing the hits, so to speak, with beers that were tried and true, that we knew people would want to buy, beers that they had engaged with previously in the past, but very quickly, it became obvious that, through the magic of, I guess, telecommunication and FaceTime and whatnot, we'd be able to, get together with our brewing industry peers and friends and continue to be creative and continue to foster that sense of community. So we've done a few collaborations over the past, I guess, 7-8 months, and have continued to grow in terms of production and whatnot. We've actually found pretty fertile ground within this pandemic for growth. And one of those avenues being the I Voted Today collaboration, or I guess it's hard to even call it a collaboration, just the I Voted Today initiative.
Yeah. So tell us the spirit of it, because, we've covered the All Together Beer Project, and you reference this is a similar spirit to the Black is Beautiful project.
So totally. So, taking great inspiration from what Other Half did with All Together and what Weathered Souls did with Black is Beautiful, we kind of crafted this initiative to be completely nonpartisan and to cast as wide a net within our country as possible to communicate to brewers who would then in turn communicate to their local population just the importance of voting. So at Tired Hands, we've never been overtly political, but we've always encouraged voting amongst our staff and our guests. And we wanted to just extend that sort of that broadcast as widely and thoroughly as possible. So, the meat and potatoes of it is just a super simple, hoppy American pale ale. We encouraged participating breweries, of which I think we hit around 45 all day, which is pretty great considering there's 50 states. We encouraged all participating breweries to kind of put their own spin on it because obviously, I'm in Philly. I know what my local people like. I know how to play it in the pocket. And that was sort of the point of this beer, is to give people kind of what they wanted, just to get those cans in their fridge. So every time they cracked one open, they'd be reminded to just vote. And yeah, it kind of caught on. If it all ends up ringing true, we will have impacted the voter turnout in some monicum of a way.
Yeah, no, it's great to see everyone get behind it. I mean, in particular, you're in a swing state, where the votes kind of do matter more. And then also Ryan. So Ryan, tell us how you got involved with this project, and you're in North Carolina.
Yeah, it was pretty easy. Gene sent me a text message and said, "Hey, do you guys want to be part of this?" And we said yes. As soon as he mentioned it, we knew that we wanted to be on board with it, because I think voter participation is a really important cause, not just in presidential elections, but local elections as well, because those have a big impact on people's daily lives.
Yeah. So, Gene, let's go back to Tired Hands. I think it's the first time I've ever had you on. I remember, I don't know how many years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, you first launched in New York City. I remember going with an industry friend to one of the barcade bars in Manhattan. And first time I had Tired Hands, it was a very hazy IPA. It definitely woke me up, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. How has it gone for you guys? Your whole vision. Just tell us your vision from the beginning.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that you had a hazy hoppy beer from us. That's definitely our sweet spot and has been for about, almost a decade now. But the vision for Tired Hands was to open a small brewery with a small kitchen and operate as a community meeting place. So our original brewery, I'm speaking to you from our original brewery right now, houses a 7-barrel Peter Austin system, and a kitchen that's probably the size of your broom closet. And we rode that hard for about 3 years, and then the vision kind of became a little more prismatic. We opened up a much larger production brewery in the same town of Ardmore, with up to a 40-barrel brew house in there, with a much larger kitchen, cranking out a totally different menu than the cafe, and began engaging in distribution, which is how you initially engaged with our beer. From there, I realized that my role was much greater than that of a brewer/business person. I realized that in order to continue to foster talent that had been with us since day one, and we're extremely fortunate in that, at this point, with no exception, leaders in this company, people that run this company with me, have been with us for at least 8 years. And that really makes me proud. So I realized that in order to continue growing in a positive, healthy manner, I would have to foster their growth, both professionally and emotionally. So we began opening other smaller establishments. We have since opened up a general store type thing in Ardmore. We've opened up this cool fantasy stoner restaurant in Fishtown. We've opened up an 8,000 square foot beer garden. And before the pandemic hit, we had hit right around 150 employees. And then the pandemic hit. So the vision now has, like I said earlier, has kind of turned inward, and we're focusing much more on that production side of our business. We have yet to reopen any sort of our front facing restaurants, just out of extreme caution for our staff and our communities.
Wow, that's a great little intro. I'm going to just jump to voting history. It seemed like in the 19th century, there were great barbecues where people would basically host thousands of people and try to get them to vote for them. I don't think you can give away beer. Can you give away beer? And how else could beer play in swinging an election?
In Pennsylvania, at least, we can give away up to 10 fluid ounces per person per day. And that's, what we've done in the past is if you brought in your little I voted today sticker, we would give you a free 8-ounce pour. I guess that's not necessarily encouraging voting. It's rewarding voting. But yeah, I kind of open up the floor to Jesse and Ryan, how beer can encourage voting.
Yeah.
I would say for us, what we're trying to do is use the I Voted Today project to highlight the members of our staff and how they're going to what their plan is for having their voices heard in this election coming up. So as a way to highlight, and I think it's a general movement, right, with this whole voter awareness, that having a plan. There's so much. With the pandemic happening. There's so much uncertainty about how people can vote. And I think what's important is that people decide in advance how they feel safest voting and make a plan to get it done so that, their voice can be, so they can have their say and it can be counted, which is, the important part of, especially this year, of making sure that, especially with our folks and people who are immunocompromised, that they can get their ballots in, and that they know that they'll be collected and delivered by the U.S. Postal Service. In New York, we have early voting starting on this coming October 24th. I won't date the, but so Saturdays you can get in for, I think it's 2 full weeks prior to November 3rd that you can get in and vote and hopefully avoid bigger lines. And then, it's too late to request absentee ballots at this point, but hopefully people that did request them have gotten them and are going to get them filled out. So we're trying to use the beer as a way to just keep the idea in front of people on our social media, every day or every other day, highlighting something or somebody on our staff and what their plan is.
That's great. And Ryan, then North Carolina, how is this, I Voted Today beer working for you guys?
So for us, it's worked pretty well. We were told by somebody, I don't know, that's involved in all this type of stuff. We weren't allowed to actually give away any beer. Like, we made stickers up and we weren't even allowed to give those away because that's like in like unfairly encouraging people to vote or something. So we stopped. We weren't allowed to say trade in your sticker for our sticker. We can just give them away as is. But it's been very good for us. I think what we've tried to do with the I Voted on our end is figure out how we could use this to directly impact our local community. And so when we released the beer, we held a big voter registration drive. We signed up poll workers. We used it as an opportunity to remind people about the early voting that's going on because ours started on the 15th. And we're taking the donation portion of this and we're putting it into a local nonprofit that provides rides to the polls so that we can sponsor as many people that might not normally go to vote as possible simply because of the barriers. Maybe they don't own a car. Maybe the polling site's too far away from them, all that type of stuff to try to make it easier for them and just overall stress the importance of voting and engagement because if you don't vote, you can't complain about the politics and how they affect you. Like, think of the worst person that you don't agree with and think that they're voting and maybe you should vote because if they care about it, you should care about it and how it all is going to impact your life.
Yeah, it definitely. My daughter just graduated high school, and when she had U.S. history, she asked me some questions about politics, and I thought about it, and I said, honestly, the first thing is if we had more people voting, like right now, barely 50% of people vote in a general election. If you even had 80% of the population voting, you would be able to see things a lot clearer, So I think you guys are onto something. Let's talk about the beer itself. So this formula, it's a double dry hopped pale ale, 5%. Jesse, what's yours? Because your can says IPA.
Yeah, so we sort of took the liberty that Gene gave us with the project and bumped it up to 6% crushable IPA because that's one of our favorite kind of beers to make, and it's for our following, it's definitely the one of the go-to beers. So ours is, but then we basically just scaled Gene's suggested recipe. So, base malt and, is it base malt and oats, Gene?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We recommended, domestic 2-row, the most basic blank canvas.
Yeah. So we used our Pilsner malt, which is our base, and oats. And then, I believe we went with, Simcoe, Eldorado, and Citra as the hops. And, because, the idea being to make it as, from our point of view, and I think what sort of Gene's goal, correct me if I'm wrong, was just to make it as the most appealing possible drinkable beer we could so that no one would have a barrier to enjoying it, just like we want no one to have a barrier to getting their vote cast.
That's a good one. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot about your signature beer. For me, I probably enjoyed your beer more at Alphabet City Beer Co. in the East Village. That seemed like for a long time they'd have the Interboro Mad Fat Fluid on draft, and this is before COVID. Tell us the recipe for Mad Fat Fluid and how you came up with that beer, because to me that is your signature beer.
Yeah, that's definitely one of our 2 IPAs that we make the most. So Mad Fat Fluid is definitely a little more old school West Coast. It has some English pale malt, so it's got a little malty backbone to it, and Centennial, Mosaic, and a hop that's now known as Equinaut, but I still refer to as Equinox. I know it's called Equinaut. Equinaut. That's what it's called now, Equinaut. But I call it Equinox because when I fell in love with it, that's what it was called. So
yeah, I remember that too.
That's a 7% IPA, and yeah, we make a lot of Mad Fat Fluid.
Yeah. And Ryan, what about you? What are your signature beers? Do you have signature beers? I literally just heard about you 20 minutes ago. Gene called us and said, Ryan from Casita is going to join in. So just tell us a little bit more about your brewery.
Yeah, so we don't really have signature beers or anything like that. Up until August, we've operated for the past almost 5 years as a contract brewery. So I've always just rented space in a local brewery for me and used their extra capacity to brew my beer. And we just opened up our own small space in Wilson at the end of August. Because we've been a contract brewery and because of how the market is, it's usually just like 2 new beers every month. People want new beer, new beer, new beer. And we've kind of rolled that into the new space also, at least until we run out of ideas. And then maybe we'll start. We bring them back. Like any beer that we make usually only gets made once a year at most. And most times it doesn't come back for like 2 years or so.
Yeah. And so Wilson, North Carolina, what's the political climate like there? Is it generally like a mixed bag of people? What is Wilson, North Carolina?
It's a rural town. It once was a major tobacco hub, and I think people would look at it and think that it leans red, but Wilson tends to go blue in almost all elections. Yeah. So like G.K. Butterfield, which is one of the few libertarians in Congress, is from Wilson, North Carolina. He gets voted in there all the time, but for the most part, it goes blue in all the elections.
And then when it was a tobacco area, has something replaced tobacco?
Yeah, so there's pharmaceutical companies. Pfizer has a base here, I believe. So pharmaceuticals have come in. Tires are a big thing. Gene's been here. He's seen the giant White's tire statue.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have seen that.
He says unfortunately because it kind of looks like it's giving the Sieg Heil. And so it's fun to drive people past it. So tires is a big industry here, and now beer. Our brewery's doing quite well. It was a weird thing opening a brewery in the middle of a pandemic, but we've been very lucky with the support we get from our town. And we are also extremely lucky in the fact that we have a massive outdoor space that we can put everybody in instead of inside.
Wow, that's pretty great. So instead of smoke tobacco, you could tell people with the tires, they could smoke rubber, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a little flavor out of you all, because it seems that North Carolina and Pennsylvania seem to be really important for this election. And we know they're both very complex states, right? You guys you have cities, you have rural, you have a lot of different histories. North Carolina, just like Pennsylvania, is a big state.
Also, North Carolina and Pennsylvania, I believe, both have faced Supreme Court cases over gerrymandering, where they're supposed to redraw the districts, because both of them had certain legislators who drew these really complex districts that, when they went up for the sniff test above the Supreme Court, both got ruled down.
Wow. And Gene, did you expect to have these types of conversations when you started the I Vote I Voted Today beer project?
Yeah, totally. That's sort of at the core of it is to encourage these types of conversations. Like I said earlier, I'm a very visual person. And I was my hope was that in creating this label, which we, supplied every participating brewery with, we would create a conversation piece with each 4-pack, with each can, because the label is literally just our take on the I Voted Today sticker. So, 100%. I expected it, and I'm glad that they're happening.
So for you, the evolution, I first had your beers on draft. This whole can revolution with, how many thousands of breweries in this country, definitely I feel like for creativity, you guys you're a boon for the creative industry, because of all those artists making labels, which the last time I remember, it was something like the record albums of the 60s and 70s, so you guys are responsible, or, your industry is really generating a lot of creative art projects, but also these social projects. It's like I said, Black is Beautiful, All Together, and now this. What's your take on that? Do you feel like that's an important part of what breweries are doing now? How much do you guys engage in the creativity? You have different artists working for you, things like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, guilty as charged. Like I said earlier, I'm a very visual person, and from the inception of Tired Hands, I've known Ryan for my entire adult life. If not my longest brewing friend, one of my longest brewing friends. And I had the Tired Hands logo mocked up, half a decade before we actually opened. Then when we actually opened, I was in charge of all the visuals, the brewing and whatnot. And eventually, after a few years, I relinquished that control just like you were hinting at earlier, we hired our favorite illustrator to come in-house and create our labels, the illustrations for our labels from the ground up. And I think to date, over the past, like I said, almost decade, we have created something like 2,000 unique beers. Not all of them went into a package, but a good majority of them did. So between myself and Mike, our illustrator, we as a company generate a whole lot of new imagery for consideration weekly. And I don't think we're any exception. And I completely agree with you that this is, a really engaging, imaginative time in craft beer, both organoleptically and visually, for not just the producers, but also people engaging with the beer, the customers. As a matter of fact, I went into a bottle shop yesterday for the first time in about a year, and I was completely bowled over, sensory overload with all of the different selections available, both in can and bottle. Jesse, I saw your beer there.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Was my beer there?
No, your beer wasn't right.
Yeah, getting the art, and the names, it's fun. It's a big part of the fun part of brewing, being a brewer, I guess, and running a brewery. And trying to put some personality into every product that we put out, and and working with visual artists. We work with a group of basically typesetters that are actually based in Philly, and it's so much fun to give them a name and an inspiration, and then have them come back with some really super fun or intriguing type treatment that sort of totally captures the personality of the beer that we want to project out to our beer drinkers in our community. And I think that the stuff that Tired Hands does with the illustrations, and then I just saw your when you Colin sent us some of that lager, Gene, with the cool new super fresh die cut label. What's that series called?
The Trembler Pills.
Was that the Trembler with the wrap around the bottom, but then the big die cut that went up the front? I thought that was
those are saisons.
Oh, those were saisons, right. Yeah. Those are awesome, man. Those are that
was a big sort of like engineering feat for us in our creative department. It took about a year to design them, but they look super sleek and, dare I say, futuristic.
Yeah, it's really fresh. And seeing all, new breweries, peers, friends, dare I say competition, everybody's always up in the game, right? And so it's fun that way.
Yeah. Hey, well, we're off to a great start. We're going to take a short break and be back in a few minutes on Beer Sessions Radio. All right.
All of us at HRN have been keeping busy, despite working and recording from home. This fall, we're proud to announce new shows on the network that each bring important and enlightening stories to listeners around the world. While the world is in turmoil and the future of our country is uncertain, there are certain constants that help keep us going. For us, food and storytelling are essential. While we can't come together in person, food podcasts from HRN provide a virtual table we can all gather around. Bringing exceptional stories to your ears and keeping you informed on the ever-changing political and environmental issues of our time is integral to our mission. At a time when the world around us is rapidly changing, HRN is committed to being here for our listening community, and we need you to be here for us. Join our table and help ensure the future of food radio by becoming a member of HRN. Go to heritageradionetwork.org/donate to make a contribution. Check out the latest additions to our lineup while you're there. You can see all of our series at heritageradionetwork.org/new show.
Hey, welcome back to Beer Sessions Radio on Heritage Radio Network. Become a member, heritageradionetwork.org. We're talking about the I Voted Today beer project by Tired Hands and with Interboro and Casita Brewing. So guys, we're talking about labels and creativity and social projects. And, beer is so much more than, just a fluid. One thing I love about these projects is that, to me, drinking a beer, the place you were in used to really mean a lot, whether you're in a pub or a tasting room. But now, most of us drinking at home or not in a public place. I guess these stories really matter, right? Anybody want to join that one? Ryan? The importance of stories and the art and the social projects for beer in terms of people's enjoyment, since they're not drinking in pubs and things.
So for us, up until August, we were a contract brewery, and it was literally just me and my wife. And I make the beer, and my wife does all the labels and social media and stuff. And I feel like it really helped be able to tell a story about us. So whenever people got our beer and they saw the labels, and sometimes it features like our daughter on the front or something like that, it really engages the consumers with us before we had a tap room or anything, and really helped build the brand up that way a little bit. I think the social projects are good because there's a tendency, I guess, to not want to put yourself out there in the industry and concerned that you might alienate a potential customer or something like that. And all of these have really helped to let breweries for once put themselves out there a little bit and say, like, I believe in these things that should not be anything that upsets people. But I know, at least with the Black is Beautiful, a lot of breweries face backlash from people who thought that this was something they shouldn't take part in or anything like that. And even in the I Voted, I'm sure there's people that get upset about it. But that says more about the consumer than the brewery. I think it's a good thing that breweries are doing this. There's going to be more of them, I'm sure, going down the road, and all in a hopeful push to push more social consciousness forward from consumers and breweries alike.
Yeah, I remember seeing a couple months ago, Jeff Allworth of Beervana had posted a survey of craft beer drinkers, and it was amazing that, at least of his list, his readers, many more of them were of like a liberal persuasion than conservative. Maybe it has to do with education. I'm not really sure. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, but it is very interesting to see what the craft beer audience is. Let's talk about COVID. During COVID, you all make different beers, special beers. Gene, are you making more SKUs during COVID because you're selling cans, or are you still on the same program that you were before?
Yeah, that's a great question with a loaded answer. So when COVID first hit, we had, like I'm sure most businesses, in our case breweries, we kind of found ourselves scrambling, wondering what to do. We were actually on the precipice of an expansion that we delayed slightly. And, we were having these internal conversations like, well, shoot, should we just brew a bunch of lager and imperial stouts, old ale, that's just beers that we can just park in tanks and not worry about if we get shut down. But that fear and paranoia and confusion totally subsided after a few weeks when we realized that we were selling more beer than we had in quite some time in cans. So obviously, all of our packaging pivoted to just cans. Still to this day, we're like 97% in cans with our full production. And after a few weeks, we realized that people engaging with our beer weren't buying the one-offs like they used to. They completely pivoted to the beers that they knew were going to be, precisely what they wanted at a price point that was agreeable. So, for the first 3 to 4 months, we totally ratcheted up, our core stable of beers like Hop Hands Alien Church, Pineal, Oblavex, whatever. But then after about 3 or 4 months, we saw that trend begin to subside, and demand for one-offs picked back up again. So I guess right now, like as we're having this conversation, we're pretty much back to where we were pre-COVID, with the exception of we're just packaging everything in cans, and we were able to actually expand during this whole pandemic, which was a pleasant surprise.
And Jesse, what about you?
So we went through a definite, initial total shutdown, followed by the same sort of contemplation of let's just put stuff in tanks that we know can sit, followed by May and June when it got really bad in New York City. And, when no one had any idea how the thing was transmitted or who had it, and it got real bad in New York. It got scary, to everybody ordering at home and us seeing just sort of a massive increase or pickup from zero, at least, to people doing takeout. And then in the summer, it was like everybody just left town. Once school was out, the city got really, really quiet. And so we slowed down again, and then we picked back up again in September. For us, it's really just been a pretty massive roller coaster and unpredictable. We're at this point back to pretty much the same SKU mix in terms of we've got our Bushberg and our lagers and our IPA that we make all the time. We're still making them all the time. And then we're doing the same number essentially every month over month of one-offs. The beer, people are just still drinking beer. And so it's good for us. Overall, I'd say there has definitely been an impact in terms of we're also 90 whatever percent package. And we went from being 75% draft. And we're trying to push the draft back to support our local customers, people who are trying to stay open with, 25%. We brewed a lot more lagers, and so we can offer out deals on the lagers because people are trying to have a beer that they can make a good margin on. And, and we're trying to help our customers make it through this, to whatever the other side is, so yeah, it hasn't been, I wouldn't say it's been fun. It's definitely been exciting. And it has, to Ryan's point about sort of the social justice in beer, I think, it has been a time when it's really felt, we were always kind of political a little bit. We did a beer called Not My Prez, in our El Prez series. And we lost a lot of people at that point. And so we kind of were honing in on who our core audience was anyway. But it's been super liberating to be able to be involved in first the All Together and then the Black is Beautiful. And now the I Voted to really put a stake in the ground as far as we're concerned about who we are for our customers. Beer is, I've always said it's a lifestyle choice as much as it is as a flavor choice or anything. And so, we've always said that we're going to be, we're trying to figure out who exactly our core audience is and cater to them as much as possible,
Yeah, I mean, way back, one woman wrote a book called America Walks into a Bar, and I'm blanking on her name, but she basically said that the whole colonial revolution was because people were able to come together freely and associate, and they talked ideas, and that was a big reason why America became independent. So beer does have a role in democracy. I think so. Yeah. Beer and barbecue. We'll have a big beer and barbecue and get out the vote. Let's talk about state by state. I want to talk about policies that affect breweries. Now, let's go to Gene. You're in Pennsylvania. I know when COVID started that some of the state liquor stores were shut down. What's going on in that state? Can you ship out of state? What are some state restrictions or things that benefit you guys as breweries in Pennsylvania?
Sure. So, liquor law in Pennsylvania has changed at a breakneck speed over the past decade. So when we opened, distributors were only able to sell cases, and that, flash forward today, a distributor can sell everything from a single honey bottle to a case of beer to a keg. It's really been blown open. And so Pennsylvania has also, I don't know when it began, but Pennsylvania has also allowed Pennsylvania wineries and breweries, and I'm sure spirit producers, to ship within the state for some time. It's just for whatever reason, up until the pandemic, most breweries didn't do it. We were extremely fortunate in that about 2 years ago, we established our own direct-to-consumer delivery service called Dudley Direct. And so we did a lot of digging. My wife in particular, who's a lawyer, did a whole lot of digging to sort of pave the way for us to be able to do this. But I say we were incredibly fortunate because we just shifted gears as soon as the pandemic hit, opened the floodgates to our Dudley Direct service, and people just immediately took advantage of it. And we were fortunate because we had the infrastructure, we had the raw materials in terms of packaging, to just shotgun blast. We had a relationship with a private courier to just shotgun blast it out to Pennsylvania residents. Since the pandemic has hit, at least Pennsylvania has opened up to allowing UPS and FedEx to deliver. So that, cuts a little bit of cost off of working with a private carrier. And so now it's just really state to state. So we just opened up DC as a delivery zone, and we're working towards opening up a few more states over the next few weeks. But yeah, it's Pennsylvania has become a very agreeable state to be a beer producer / distributor in.
And if I were running for some random office in Pennsylvania, what could I promise breweries in Pennsylvania that would get their vote?
What could you promise?
Doesn't mean you'll get it, but
lower the state excise tax.
Always comes back to taxes, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm struggling. I mean, like I said, Pennsylvania has become an extremely agreeable state to do business in as an alcohol producer.
Yeah. And Jesse, what about in New York? Have you guys been doing anything like deliveries or anything?
Yeah, so New York is also, I would say, an incredibly agreeable state to be an alcohol producer. We have a pretty added complexity in that we're not only a brewery but also a distillery. So every time any of the laws change, we've got to keep our eyes on sort of both vectors. And New York did open up also home delivery for both breweries and distilleries via any sort of third party carrier. UPS has been the most agreeable. The only hiccup for us is that you're technically not allowed to put spirits and beer in the same box, which is is a major pain in the ass for us because we make these little canned cocktails that a lot of people like, and they also want to buy beer. And so then it's problematic. And that way, actually, the spirits laws or regulations or temporary sort of easements of regulations happen slower than they did for beer, which is almost always the case anyway. Legislators and people in general are always way more cautious about spirits than they are about beer when it comes to like letting people do shit. It's just more expensive to operate a distillery than it is a brewery and the whole nine. But yeah, so now we're doing UPS delivery and home delivery. We had our own home delivery service for a while for Brooklyn and Manhattan, and that went really well. But then as the bars started to open back up, we couldn't really figure out how to get our delivery team. They were getting swamped with both sort of our accounts ordering and then the retail people. So we switched them all over to UPS.
You guys had a pretty creative name for your delivery service, didn't you?
IRT, Interboro Rapid Transit.
Same as the subway, bro. I love that.
Exactly.
Oh, cool. And Ryan, what about for you guys? North Carolina, from tobacco to rubber. Smoke rubber, bro. No.
North Carolina does it does allow shipping. It's a state that's actually really good for shipping beer. We don't do it because I don't know how to do any, like, that's a bunch of online stuff, and I don't have a website that's good like that or anything. Just because of how we've been up to now, we've never had to make that pivot or or anything. And we rely a lot on our retail accounts, who we've been dealing with for the 3 years before we opened up our tasting room. and I wouldn't want to ever like jeopardize those relationships with them, because we've been a very distribution heavy beer brand because we did not have a place for people to come and buy our beer directly. And some of them do a lot of shipping around the state already. So I'd rather like funnel people towards those places than take it myself.
That's a great attitude. The independent retailers, that's also part of politics too. Every state has different laws for retail shops. And I know that in New York in particular, there's this great tradition of independent wine and liquor stores that is a very special franchise that is, there's a lot of great laws like that. I know Colorado had laws where only independent retailers could sell beer, wine, and liquor too, which people say definitely helps a lot of small craft. This episode is almost too much for me to handle because there's so much going on. Literally, as we're recording, there's a debate tonight. I do feel that I like the way that this is going, and I'd like for you guys each to sum up why you think this project is important, and it's still going to be going on. So these beers, you can still buy them after the election. What's the case, Gene?
I mean, we brewed a few batches of it, so we didn't dictate sort of the momentum of other breweries' brewing schedules. So if they're still brewing it, then you can still get it. But we are on the tail end of our second batch right now, so just in time, apparently.
Yeah, no, it's refreshing. I mean, I'm one of those people that's just about ready to hang up on the whole election. I already voted, of course, too. So I voted. I was able to do absentee ballot in New York. But, I don't know, man. I think we should just toast. Does everyone have a beer with them? Is anyone drinking something?
I just finished a hard seltzer.
I've got a beer.
What are you drinking, Jesse?
I'm drinking one of our I Voteds, of course, because I was like, I'm going to drink this while I talk to Jimmy and Gene and Ryan about I Voted.
And what about you, Gene?
I was also going to drink a hard seltzer just to be funny from Stillwater. He makes this ritual pineapple that's really damn good. But
that's what I just drank, Gene.
Is that right?
Yes.
Isn't it awesome?
I was on the road when Gene asked me to be a part of this. I pulled over to one of my accounts to record this session, and one of my accounts offered it to me, and it was fantastic.
It's fantastic. But anyway, Jesse sort of jogged my memory, and I recalled that Jester King sent me some of their I Voted today, so I'm going to open that right now.
Sweet.
Yeah, so and what leeway did they take?
What they brewed, Gene?
I couldn't tell you precisely the hops they use, but if I'm not mistaken, all of their hoppy beer is fermented with that Kvik yeast. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but
Kvik, I think. Yeah. Oh,
yeah. It's actually really good. Super like lemon verbena-y. So I'd imagine they use maybe something like Cascade or Crystal.
Yeah, and then one more question, because we talk about this a lot. So Jesse, when did you first hear about the I Voted Today beer project, and then what would have been your first question for Gene?
Well, he texted me, and my first question for Gene was, when? I think I texted Colin like a few days later, Gene, and was like, so, when? And Colin was just like, as soon as possible. And I was like, all right, cool. Let's get this going. You know what I mean? We're donating a $1 from every 4-pack to the ACLU. We did another beer this summer called the People Power Project, and we were donating to them already. So for us, donating the proceeds or a portion of the proceeds to ACLU is what made the most sense. For me, it's like I said, I think, people just need to get out and vote. Breweries, everybody needs to sort of take a stand, and I think they're trying to hide or not hide. I don't know. I don't want to, but I think taking a stand and having our brand and our business and the people behind our business stand up for what we all believe in is important. And this is an awesome way to do it. So I was thrilled when Gene invited us to do it and that he was doing it. And, I think that in the big beer community, there's leaders, right? And it takes leaders stepping out and saying, we're going to do this cool thing. And it allows everybody else to sort of, get involved and be part of the community and sort of point the direction for where we want beer and our society overall to go,
Yeah, man. Well, that's great. Jesse, thanks for pointing this out to me and bringing everyone together. Gene, anything else you want to say to wrap it up?
I really appreciated Ryan's point about initiatives like this being really sort of like positive scaffolding for breweries, even if they're sort of gun shy to support something. And yeah, man, an informed and engaged electorate is necessary for democracy to succeed. And, less than 62% of eligible voters have turned out over the past few elections. So, if we can broadcast a beer like this as widely as possible, I feel like it's just a super positive step in the right direction. And, at the end of the day, even if they don't vote, which would suck, they still get a delicious beer out of it.
That's great. And the last thing, your philosophies, I know I'm pushing the show, but in some of the guidelines and language you guys, you said there's loose guidelines for this beer. You didn't really give a set recipe.
Yes.
Is that part of your philosophy in general, that a creative philosophy or?
Yeah, kind of. As we've grown, we have like our set recipes and like set ways of doing things, SOPs and procedures and whatnot. But speaking personally as a creative person, my brewery was founded on, this sort of axis of creativity and hard work. And that's, still to this day at our smaller brewery, our cafe brewery, it's a weird day if we fully record a recipe, as we're brewing 7 barrels at a time. I totally encourage experimentation and creativity amongst our brewers, especially on the smaller scale. So for us to not provide a brew sheet and specific connections between point A, point B, point C is sort of just par for the course for how I like to do things. I think it's more fun that way and, a little more engaging because now for the collectors out there, they're going after every iteration of it because each iteration is going to be a different beer in and of itself.
I just want to say, if the TTP is listening, Gene said all of that in parody. He keeps very detailed brew logs for everything he produces.
Hey, Gene. Sorry, Jimmy. Can I tell a real quick story? Do you have
Sure.
time? Yeah. All right. So the first time that I went and brewed at Tired Hands with Gene and Colin, we were gonna brew a quintuple IPA, right, Gene? Like that was yeah. And I showed up, and Colin was like, "What's a quintuple IPA?" And I was like, "I don't really know what a quintuple IPA is." And then he and I started talking, and he was like, "Wait, you used to brew boat beer? Let's brew that, but make it our own thing." And it was literally like one of the best collaborations I've ever gotten to participate in, because we literally just like walked over to their pallet rack full of grain, looked at what they had, came up with a grain bill on the fly, walked into their cold room, looked at the pellets of hops they had, came up with a hop schedule on the fly, talked about how we were going to acidify the mash with, to bring the pH down to increase the perception of hops. Gene came in, maybe 45 minutes later, was like, "That sounds awesome. We've got all this lemon juice. Instead of acidifying with lactic acids, let's acidify with lemon juice, and let's use a bunch of lemon verbena that you had growing on your farm, Gene?" Yeah. And it was just like, okay, cool. 45 minutes later, we had, a beer that I was super proud of, and it turned out, awesome as far as I was concerned. It was Ridiculoid, right?
Ridiculoid, yep.
And it was all just literally just like, let's sit down at the table like you're sitting down at the kitchen and come up with a really good recipe. And it was a ton of fun. And I think that, that's one of the things I've always admired about Tired Hands is the experimentation is at the forefront. You know what I mean? And
Can I tag on to this story really quick just to try to, if anything, just show how it goes even before Tired Hands started. So Gene and I, we homebrewed together before either of us started our breweries back when we were in Pennsylvania, and he worked at Weyerbacher and I worked for Tanzo's Beverage in Northampton, Pennsylvania. And there was a time when we were brewing a batch of pale ale, and Gene literally rolled up and was just like, "Hey man, my friend just gave me all these tomatoes and basils. Let's just throw it in." And just threw it in the boil, made this tomato basil pale ale. That was absolutely fantastic. But was another thing where we just, sit down and brew one thing and end up with something different just because the muse floated in front of him and took his attention away.
That's called the spirit of brewing, and it flows strong through all of us.
I mean, we did it with oysters there just recently. When Gene came to brew with me last month or in August, an oyster farmer just walked into the brewery and was like, "I'm a big fan of yours. Can I give you a bunch of oysters?" We're like, "Yeah." Give us 20 pounds of oysters. So we just threw it in the boil.
Well,
awesome.
You guys are just getting warmed up, which is what happens on this show. So hopefully this will lead to many more collaborations and good vibes between you all. And big shout out. I'm voting for free beer. Let's put it that way. And remember, there's a great history of breweries and publicans and taverns being the fountain of democracy in America. So I'm so proud of you guys. There have been some really great social justice and other collaborations that have been cooked up during COVID. And I think that, once again, these craft breweries are leading the way, showing us what we can do. And there's nothing new going on now. It's 8 months into COVID. There's a lot of changes. New York City right now, some number of restaurants are probably going to close just for the winter because they really can't figure out how to justify or even to operate with indoor seating. So you got to keep these projects going. We're keeping the radio station going, and everyone's going to get out and vote. So thanks so much, guys. Big shout out to everybody, to Gene, Ryan, and Jesse for joining me here on Heritage Radio Network. Shout out to our producer, Dylan Hoyer, and our engineer, Amanda Wang. This show you'll be hearing the week of October 27th, 2020. So thanks so much. I'm Jimmy Carboni. We'll catch you next time on Beer Sessions Radio. All right. Woo! Beer Sessions Radio is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like. Tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Heritage Radio.
Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be, and realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next farm bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.